we are in class, and if it's
Okay, I
possible for
can do
you
that.
to maybe get closer
Yeah,
to
yeah.
your
My
computer.
voice is, yeah, I can raise it perfectly. All right. Now it's okay. This pitch is all right.
Can you guys hear the lecturer?
Can you hear me?
If you can, please get closer to the floor, will be better so that you can
No, no, no.
hear.
I will try to raise voices
Not
only. I'm
you.
saying, don't
Hmm.
want neighbors to come in. That's why I'm yelling. But anyway, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Attar Javed. I am a regular CBRN expert at the NATO Center for Excellence in Ankara for the since almost 10 years now, 9 to 10 years. And also, I specialized in Middle East security and different areas, nuclear safety and security, and also other areas, especially in the defense and the strategic assessment, advanced assessment for the leadership. I have been teaching at working different international institution with Department of Defense in Canada, Royal Danish Defense Academy in Denmark, and had some lectures at the Danish National Defense University, Islamabad as well. Mostly I worked internationally with international security organizations, almost 33 years now. And this, my experience at Tor Vergata is that I'm very proud to be, as that I'm also a degree, first level advanced this degree holder, but I'm member of the study board. It has been great honor for me to always be part of discussion, and my method of teaching is different than other teachers. I'm sure you will notice it now. I come with the field experience as well as a practitioner. Also, I do ground, I would say information as well on different subjects, on different themes in CBRNE. Because in CBRN, of course, there are different categories what relates to, of course, as we say, the soft and the hard one. So I combine both of them. So my introduction is, I just want to give it short. I've been an international security fellow at New America Foundation for 3 years in Washington, D.C. And I worked on the, as I said, on the Middle East and security mostly. So this is my introduction. I think it's enough. I don't want to bore you with what I have done. I'd like to do what we can do now. So if you allow me, I can start the lecture. Guys, did you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfectly all right. So then, Sabrina, I'm going to start it by saying that first of all, this CBRN or WMD threat, because I'm not going to give you a case study. I'm going to build us hypothetically or a scenario for you within the discussion. But before I go in sequence of my discussion, I will ensure that we go step by step. First of all, the WMD and this CBRNE, as we say, threat is real. Although we have witnessed a few incidents, but we should know that the WMD threat, or we call it CBRN threat, of this having a material in the hands of terrorists or rogue states, we call it, is real. It's not fabricated. Only the issue here is that there is a big divide among the practitioners and the academia. Most of the people who have the right to know are the first respondents, as for yourself. Those who are working in military or in police or Interpol or otherwise, we can bifurcate this discussion into three equal parts, but they are all interconnected. First, I will say that I'm not going to go to the basic definitions. You guys are already learned about it. You know all this. I'm not going to mention Om incident in Japan or anthrax, letter anthrax in the United States, but they are there. They are just basic, I would say, benchmarks to understand that what could have happened and what can be done to prevent. I go with the prevention, but first I will start, as I said, that my main concern is on the security side, that we call it in the preventive mode. For preventive mode, the first system, I saw the module, you guys must have already have intelligence, heard about from CBR intelligence, how it works. There are two basic doctrine, I would say. Why I say doctrine? Because in this affair of CBRNE, there are two communities involved. One are the scientists, and the others are involved who benefit from the science development. So those who work in the field of chemical or biological or nuclear area, they would know the scientists come from a very elite background in terms of their clearances, in terms of their, I would say, resume. But we always think, and I have presented this 9 years ago at this NATO Center for Excellence, that there are two major doctrines. One is that what is the ideology of the scientist? That's very important. That does the scientist have an ideology? I'm starting from actually to give you some original, I would not say original, but the case studies, first-hand information. Ideological position of a scientist matters a lot because in the modern warfare, there is no compulsion on terrorist or the state acquire all kind of knowledge. Now that we have AI or chat GPT or all kind of self-learning tools, applications, it has become much easier. And that's why it will become more challenging for the state policymakers to define how to prevent. Starting for prevention, as I said, there are two doctrines. One is ideological, other is relating to the safety and security. Handling of the chemical, from handling of the chemicals to the recruiting of a scientist, all matters a lot. So I'm sure the ideological position of a scientist, if it, connected with the terrorist group or self-recruited, selfly, as we say, radicalized, she can definitely pose a potential threat to an institution or also to the larger community. We all know that the radioactive material or others may not kill, but it has a extraordinary fear, an amount of fear, the scope of which is bigger than I would say the killing field in a battlefield, I would say, because it stays in your system. So therefore, one doctrine is about the how to scramble or assess the ideological positions of scientists before you going into that this incident will happen. There is an important factor here that you have to prevent. In order for that, that's why I start with the intelligence. And that's why there is one more system of, as we say, not system, framework of, we call it personal reliability assessment framework, which is a very strict in many big labs, in other institutions, starting from civil nuclear plants to the chemical industry, especially in the labs. I don't know what are the standards of the countries you are from, but basically one of the important factors which plays in from the start is a personal reliability assessment framework. In major countries like the United States, like Britain, and some of the European countries which has this, like in France, for example, they have a very special system. It's a set essential in which a person is being framed, and like IQ test, like other tests. So this is one doctrine. The second doctrine relates to the where all this practice is being conducted. Like, for example, at the universities, you are here to learn about, okay, if you are in the military and you are confronted with some kind of usage of material, like we can give examples of many countries in the past. There are, of course, glaring examples of in Syria and on other countries. I mean, it's not a political discussion, but there were a large quantity of chemical and other material in Central Asian state under Russia and the former Soviet Union were decommissioned. The weapons were decommissioned by the United States, by the Pentagon, and in biological labs, it was decommissioned under President Obama by former Assistant Secretary of Defense Andrew Weber, which we call him Andy Weber. He's very famous. And we are also colleagues. We teach at NATO together. So it means that you have to really understand the structure of the security and the breach of it. Any leakage, any CBR incident, prior to that process, there are two parties which must be remembered. One is the party which suffered, that we call them well-being ready, and the other one is, ready to defend. The defense is in your hand. Defense against any CBR incidents in the hands of professionals. Academia contributes because the practitioners have to learn from theory to all the, because it's not a fantasy, and it's not also, you can't really sleep overnight that, okay, these incidents are less in numbers, people are less affected over the past 100 years or 50 years, so it will not happen. That's why I brought in that in the modern warfare, the most important component, which is at the moment is not in consideration, maybe it will come in 5 years, is about the access of information and knowledge. For example, in the past few months back, there was an incident that there was one person who wrote on the chat GPT or how to do this and that, and with the AI help of the AI, he could have been able to develop some kind of how do I say, some kind of blueprint to attack. Maybe, if you have a resented official, if a resented scientist, he's not getting promotion, he's being work tired, he's been hooked up with some kind of underground mafia network. We don't know that, but all these possibilities are start from the pre-consideration of any incident. So before going into the investigation of incident, one should have the perfect knowledge, at least not perfect, but maximum ground intelligence information. So what factors led to this incident? I mean, there are accidents. We are not going to consider accidents, but they are important for the first responders to control the damage. But for our purpose here, my purpose of this is that's why I'm saying that there are two doctrines which you have to combine. I don't know if you heard it before, but ideological positions of the administration of administrating a lab or controlling things are very important. There has been countless number of incidents which are not reported because they classified by the intelligence agencies in order not to let the word out, not because they cannot, because of the method being used, which they do not want to advertise. So others cannot do a copycat or carry out an operation. Like today's word is fluid because of the private armies, because of the mercenaries, and most importantly, because of, as I said, an OSINT's availability of open source information in a way in which we never had in the past 100 years. I mean, look at the AI and the big data and others, especially with the chat GPT, the ready-made material. You just say a word, for example, do this for me, they will do it for you. So I think that's why it is very important for us to understand that the second doctrine also goes hand in hand with the first one. But let me ask you this. If I just give you a small scenario, for example, if, many years ago, I did this table talk exercise in here with another class, that if we manage to steal some material, we mount, I would say, let's make a scenario that there is a material stolen from a country, and because there are porous borders and there is a Schengen states, people can travel back and forth, and they go and take the material in the days when there are conflicts around the world, who everyone wants to be the state, and they want to use the private authority to implement their ideology. How can you prevent them? The only way to prevent them that you have either you have a prior knowledge or you are ready to defend. The second category, I said, look at the hospitals, at the facilities, doctors, technicians, nurses. They do not have the ability to really defend with instruments or with the prior knowledge or early warning system. It's a lot of yourself, like yourself, those who are working in different areas, watching, monitoring CBR and incidents. It is important for you to understand that these cannot be an isolated incident. Like we know the two incidents, I think two incidents in London, United Kingdom, when the former Soviet Union or Russian uh, expats were attacked, and one was, I think one was liquidated later. I'm sorry to use this terminology with the polonium, or I think high enriched polonium or something to with the laced on his cup of tea, a cup of coffee in central London. So I think we should understand that because of not having borders, I mean, I'm not saying we should not have, people should not be allowed to travel back and forth, but having a strict monitoring system for travel, migration, and tendencies to understand people are coming from the conflict zone, what kind of baggage they are carrying. Are they carrying a baggage with their ideology and they are ready to revenge or something? And what will happen to the reputation of the force in a European country if they fail to prevent a individual's breach, or can that individual or set of individuals from different militant organization, can they design or mount an operation by stealing material, like whether chemical or I don't think so that it will be difficult for a bioagent unless it is really some expert is involved. But I know for the chemical that it is possible, and I don't know about the nuclear material because I wouldn't think that that kind of breach can occur at a small level, because that again involved an elaborated structured mechanism of militants and their communication systems. So overall, I think for us to understand prior to investigate an incident, I will come back to the investigation as the title says, because it doesn't have to be exactly, you must aware that there are certain factors which play a role. Number one factor, as I said, ideology. Second factor, I said, the where the practice is being conducted, the institution, how secure that institution is, how secure the critical infrastructure is, what kind of security measures are being taken. Is there are passive security, you have thermo cameras, and then you have also active security, show of force through men or women fenced outside that facility. What kind of combination is being applied? Are there high end? So it depends all on the facility, what kind of facility we are talking about. But overall, where you have a doubt or suspicion that, especially as I said, today's conflict has actually awakened the CBR and expert more than before, more than ever. More projects are in process and in play, which are studying unconventional methods to go into the minds of the terrorists and criminals and see how they operate in this area. So kind of at one point, looking at the watching the facility, preventing the incident. On the other hand, looking into the clandestine network of those who can supply and sell material through dark web, through because for every act which involves, I'm not talking about the rogue state, because the rogue state have an enormous, remarkable amount of resources at their hand, forces and facility. I'm not going to talk. Going to talk about the groups, the terrorist groups, the militant groups, which may cause this incident. And that relates to basically a very logical understanding. That logical understanding is that everything what you do costs money. So the first thing one should do, the experts should do, or the policymakers should do, or the practitioner must do, those who are in charge of the monitoring of CBR incident, to look into those potential groups whose intelligence come through properly through this institution that there is a risk in this area. We see the groups are coming into a country, residing undercover, maybe doing some activities, some business front companies, and they have a long-term planning. So it goes to the finances, financial mechanism, how they access to finances and where they're going to spend the money. The second will go to the supply of the material. What are the custom rules of those countries? Can the custom rules or border control can play a role? Is there a possibility to identify, because there are most of the material is being tagged, barcoded, controlled. But what about outside that framework? What about those who use clandestine network to sell these things and then change the barcodes? Because there is no problem for people to change the barcodes. It happens in the case of heavy weaponry, weapons, and materials supplied in the defense and security area. Why not it happen here? So my discussion is out of box. I'm not going to convince you that, okay, this is very, jolly word. There is no problem. These incidents that never occurred, so I don't think so it will occur. Yes, they will occur. The risk mitigation involves in the considering the worst scenario. If you consider holy scenario, nothing will happen. We are fully equipped. We know everything. We have the full force. It will beat you in the midnight, and you will never know from where it came from. So I think with this, I'm not trying to create a scare, but not fear. But I'm preparing, like we call it emergency preparedness or early warning system. All these only can make sense if you build scenarios, hardcore scenarios, going into the mind of terrorists, imagining that all these scenarios one should build from 1 to 10 or 20, how many you can, and then have an exercise, have a simulation exercise. Look at the results of your performance. Look at how you treat the piece of intelligence information when it comes to your knowledge. Oh, there is a leakage. Who to send? Don't send police. I mean, if it is being attacked, if an embassy is being attacked, don't send police or army. The embassy will have their own. Every embassy in every country has their own system. They will won't let you in. So all this have to understand how you communicated this incident to your superiors. Who will go on the scene? What will be the impact analysis of that investigation? How the investigation will be conducted? Will you go through first from where the material came, or you go through looking at how the population is reacting to the incident? Because the way population reacts, that's the important thing for you to know in order to prevent chaos, because there is always a second strike. When the terrorists want to do something, they always do a second strike as well. Maybe they divert you on one incident and they attack the major, some institution. Maybe they attack a major figure of the personality. So these things, when we talk about combining ideology, doctrine, and the doctrine of practitioner, it exactly means that there is an unending, I would say, preparation for this. It never ends because the world also evolving. The terrorists do not follow rules and regulation and the constitution. People like you sitting here or all the institution, they have to follow the rules and regulation before they even get into that kind of. If you have to investigate an incident, you need resources, you need budget, funds. For them, it's different. You are up against unauditable accounts of terrorist networks, unauditable, unchecked, uh, ability and authority. Here, everything is being monitored. I mean, any institution cannot conduct a project or research even by saying, okay, I want to do this research because there is a risk. They say, no, 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 thank you very much. We don't want to do it. We don't have the funds. Let's get a consortium in. So that every country then will have interest in that. So my submission to all of you is, remember, you are in a field in which will evolve, and the terrorists and those people who want to harm are in 100-meter marathon, and you are in a cross-country race. I'm sorry to give you this example because this is overstructured, bureaucratic, and understanding of the incident. There is no harm in preparing your people, your experts, incident which may occur or may not occur. But if you don't prepare, if something happens, God forbid, then you would be the first respondent. You would be responsible more. You will feel more guilty that you couldn't help the innocent, defenseless population, especially children and women. So I think these things are important to consider. Now let me move to the second. I pointed out to three interconnected. This is one section. Now, the second section is when you start investigating an incident, the parties involved, the victims or the patients, or we call them those who are being harmed, what is their psychological state of mind? I mean, you cannot really start with the psychology, but psychology is one with the trauma, which will stays number one in their lives. So when you investigate, we have to be human as well. Wherever we have to be hardcore specialist experts, we have to be human. How this person coped with it after getting injured or getting exposed to the chemical or or biological agent, what will happen to them if she survives? Then how their life is? Will there be resources, funds, expertise dedicated, devoted to only to the CBR, only to the victim of the CBR and incidents? This is another area where we call it, well being ready. They cannot be, they can never be ready who is suffered or who's being exposed, who has been exposed to this kind of. So this investigation also must address an element of deficiencies. That what happened, why it was on the part of state apparatuses, why the early warning systems were ignored. If there was no early warning system, what was the policy applied when we were involved in that, when we were entangled into this kind of incident? That's why the scenario building, table talk exercise, simulation exercise help one understanding and look at the parameters of responses. Also looking at the benchmarks. What are the benchmarks of the achievements? Are we having a benchmark with a low, medium, high, or we want to make sure that it never happens? We cannot do that. It is not possible that if we say it will never happen once we have done all the measures. As I said from the beginning, it will happen. We would not know, but the best way to prepare ourselves is exactly this, that one gets into understanding, a comprehensive understanding of CBR. And there is it, and then the third, which is important part, is the technical analysis. Technical analysis, I think it can combine with the first one with ideological, because idea when weaponized with the militancy become ideological weapon. Ideological position, overall holding a political view, an oppositional view, doesn't matter. It's a democratic right of any human being, or even expert and practitioner. They all can have their right to be expressed politically. But when that idea becomes more idea of creating fissures, polarization, vengeance, political vengeance, and representing oneself to the larger conflict and inflict dangerous losses to opposition or in a general society, then it becomes an ideological weapon. That's why the technical analysis is also very important when one carries out investigation. Of course, for that, we have countless softwares and technical people, experts, I'm sure, sitting among you, and you are being taught here as well. Those who can assure you that, okay, prior to the incident, what happened, and when the incident happened, how you take this, sampling tests, soil test, air test, all those, they will reflect that what happened prior to this one. So, this is the third one. So there are three sections, as I mentioned, are important. Now, going back to the scenario building, if I ask that, the countries with the larger area, smaller population are different. Country with a smaller size of and densely populated, like in European countries, Holland is one of the countries which is densely populated. They have very little space left, actually. It's all more in the water. So those countries are more at risk when it comes to, in many other countries are more at risk, or in Asian countries, are more at risk of these incident, not incident risk, every country is at risk, but in terms of the impact, it can be higher. For example, back in the days, I mean, it's many, many years ago, but we designed a scenario where a transport plane was filled with a lot of chemical, and today we are using explosive additional terminology, but previously we were only using CBRN. So filled with a lot of explosive and all that, and the scenario was built to look at the 50,000 population and condensely populated, and see if that, the scenario was that a transport plane is hijacked by big terrorist transnational international terrorist network, and they have got all kind of chemical into it, which has an impact like gases or other chemical material combined with explosive, and they would, crash into a population. This was 2006. I presented this to the in Copenhagen to head of the NATO's and all those head of the nuclear division and State Serum Institute in Denmark and many other Nordic countries. And it was for the experience for them to see it and listen it, for the policies, and they were all practitioners. They were horrified, because it was not about only how many people will die. It was about the habitat and what will happen to the other material, because this was designed in terms of that how, I mean, this was, of course, considering 9/11, this scenario or the pictorial images, but also as I said, you going into the mind of the terrorists mean that one also have to think out the box, which defeats, as we say, the conventional wisdom, which defeats the actual what we study in theory, which defeats that, okay, accidents also can caused by incidents, as we know, which falls into category of sabotage, because sabotage at face is fine unless it is an accident, because then incident is different. So that's why when I said about what kind of security institution has, whether it has a passive security, whether it has an active security, one has to show a force, because I know in European countries, most of the time you cannot see on some facilities, which I visited as well during all my experiences. If you visit a civil nuclear energy plant or others, or chemical plants, you can't see really security. In Asia, for example, or in Middle East, you will see the security. You will see the show of force. I think it is very, very important, because then the terrorists also get intimidated, also get, they also get fearful for that one before taking actions in groups or in persons. And secondly, as I said, that because of the extraordinary technological impact on civilization, which I really am very big fan of artificial intelligence and all those important platforms which have developed and enhanced the capacity of human to react faster, respond faster. But we should also consider this as a platform access to other parties. I don't want to call it, but we call it us and the others. Others are those who want to harm the peaceful society. And that's why I talk about the migration. It's not a political statement. That's why I talk, when a skillful professional will go in a country, they will give a lot back to that society. But when people go from the conflict states, conflict zones, which may not be their fault, but then they take their baggage of revenge and to become a representative of a lone ranger, we call it. So these lone rangers have to be identified, because they can develop a consortium of such lone rangers very fast. So in the wake of any incident or sabotage or accident, I call it, these factors must be considered. Therefore, it is our responsibility, especially your responsibility as practitioner, to learn to defend, to learn to expand your capacity, enhance your capacity and knowledge. It is very complicated, maybe it appears, but it is the most fascinating, interesting subject, which will give you a good night's sleep, just because you are preparing for something which cannot be seen, which cannot be touched, but you are still defending it because you know that these incidents can happen. So this is what I would say is my submission to all the practitioners sitting in this, which I can't see them. Maybe one day we can see each other. But I've introduced you guys are introduced to me. I'm sure you're working in different capacity. So yeah, these are my submissions, and I will now let you ask questions if you want to, because that's an important factor as well. Because if something is I have said which have provoked you or incited your intelligence or give you some idea to ask question, you are welcome to do that. We still have around 20 minutes, so because I like to give this floor more to audience as well to understand. I'm sure you have studied a lot, so thank you very much for your very kind hearing and patience hearing. I hope no one fell asleep. Please introduce yourself with your name and the designation and ask the question.
Hey guys, if you have any questions, it's the perfect time to ask them.
You mean you're asking me? I should ask them?
No. I mean, I asked them. Sorry.
Yeah. You should ask them questions because I want them to ask questions. Otherwise, I will expand my lecture for 2 hours.
Okay. Did you hear what he said? That he wants you to ask questions, otherwise it will expand the lecture for 2 more hours.
I have a lot to say, so please.
He has a lot to say, so feel free to ask questions. It's the perfect
so
time.
We give you escape time.
I think
They're elaborating their questions.
Please.
Yes.
Middle East. A lot of genius. Yeah. Perfectly, yeah. No.
So far, no questions from the class.
Really? It means that I have to go back to my lecture. I have to complete the time. Guys, let me go back, and I don't know why you don't want to ask questions. So the lecture is now extended for 1.5 hours. Or I think they really want to go home. I think it looks like that. Okay. All right then. Colombo, I said Colombo. I think Colombo. I think I said what I wanted to say in terms of this subject, because I think it's important for them to take notes, and that if they have taken the notes, but I will also send them a presentation on which maybe later you can ask them to write one pager on, and then send it to me if you want to, because I'd like them to give an overview what they have understood.
Okay. Thank you so much, Javed, for your lecture.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And see you in Rome next winter.
Yeah, definitely. Or this winter, actually, in November.
Oh yes, in November. Right.
Yeah, I will be a year older then. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
All the best.
Thank you
All the
very
best with your
much.
lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Colomba.
Ecco.